Hello everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Before we get started with the questions, I do have a big announcement. I did my Extra Life event this past weekend on November 7th, Saturday, and while our goal was 10,000, we did not reach it. Now, to be fair, it was a pretty ambitious goal. I just assumed we raised 5,000 last year. I'll just double it this year and we'll see what we can do. That being said, we did raise a new all-time high for our community, and that is $6,100, like $6,092 or something like that. But about $6,100. 628 of it I donated myself, although that did come from some help from you guys, the people watching. If I hadn't put this, and yeah, there we go. That was weird. Anyway, so not only did I donate $500 myself, we had a couple of other big donations, a couple of 500 ones, on top of a ton of anywhere from $1 to $50 donations throughout the entire course of the 13-hour stream. And this right here, although you can barely see it, was a little bit more that was donated from the community. These are all subs or resubs that came during the stream. We had, I believe, 50 new unique subs and 23 resubs that day. And for each one, I donated $2.50. On top of the $10 you saw there, that was something someone donated the day before that they donated asking me where to donate. So I just put it into the Extra Life donation thing. So I just wanted to say thank you as a community. I'm not giving up on that $10,000 goal, however. At some point before the end of the year, I will definitely try to raise that remaining $3,900, because while we aren't able to do 10,000 in a day, I think we can do 10,000 before Extra Life 2015 is completely over. So hopefully you guys are willing to join us on the next one. If you're interested in donating at any point, I'll include a donation link in the description of the video below. All proceeds go to the Children's Specialized Hospitals of New Jersey, something that's pretty close to around here, and it's the only local choice I really had. On top of that, it is a good cause. So be sure to come by the stream sometime, ask if you want to donate, and I'll keep you guys apprised to when I am doing the follow-up Extra Life stream. That being said, we do have patch 3.1 on Tuesday, and I definitely want to get a good night's sleep for the next 2 nights, so let's get started with some of these questions, shall we? First question, hey Happy, have a theme song. Go ahead, pick one. Tequila. If anything, it would be Happy from Pharrell. But anyway, moving on. There seems to be a lack of enemy NPC cooperation. What kind of enemy combos would you like to see added? Maybe the classic one, NPC holds down the player while the other does a long cast time. That's they have that in Sunken Temple, the Sunken Temple hard mode, the thing that has the hand that goes out and grabs you and then it targets you with an AoE. That's a classic one, not something we always need to have. That being said, I would like to see actual NPCs. I almost said NPC players. That's not possible. NPCs that do more interesting combos than that. But I'm not really sure exactly what I would do off the top of my head. Something, if I think about just for it from that angle, I draw a blank, but I can always imagine stunning and chaining a long attack is always the easiest one to do. Other than that, just doing things like only going for the healer while somebody else prevents the tank from stopping them, peels away for their healer. Or if you attack a healer in a group of enemies, the tank will run back and stun you or taunt you or something like that. I don't know. Those are pretty basic ideas that I have. Do you think that the more complaints come from MMO players who have multiple MMOs over several years, or have played multiple MMOs over several years, or from Final Fantasy fans, people who primarily play the game because it's Final Fantasy? Do you find they have different issues? Can I combine the two and just say Final Fantasy 11 players? Can that be my number one place where I see complaints from, is Final Fantasy 11 players, played another MMO and they're Final Fantasy fans. 2 birds with 1 stone. No, I wouldn't say there's one area where it comes from more. Just people have things they like and people have things they don't like. And there are some things that are more universally disliked. For example, only having 2 dungeons in the expert roulette versus things that people will talk about that are positive, such as having 2 roulettes that we can get esoterics from. That's the pro and con to that one mechanic that I was talking about. But I don't think there's any one group that complains more. I think it's always just a mix of people who have done both. But most people who play MMOs who are new don't complain. It's the people who have been playing them for years and are Final Fantasy fans. So it's a little bit of both. That's all I'll say, a combination of both. Alright, hey Haps, you've answered a few of my questions so far, so no first time bonus, sorry. Oh. Question, do you think it would ever be possible to have legacy marks tied to an account rather than the character? You wrote a reason here. You have a lot of stuff here, which I'm assuming backs that up. TLDR at the end. I worked really hard on 1.0 and didn't want to wait several months to transfer the character I worked so hard on. Now I don't have legacy marks on my main character and I'm sad. Please use your happy influence to make a change. Well, I don't have an influence like you might think I do. I can see where the issue is. Like, you probably had, like you had a character that you don't play from 1.0 has the mark, but your character that you made when the game first came out to play with friends that is now your main does not have the mark. I don't know, though. Like, I guess the idea is that those are the characters that actually survived the calamity, or that, were around for that. So I can see why they wouldn't. I would be okay with it because it's still the legacy player that ultimately has the mark. So yeah, I think it's possible. Don't get me wrong. The question is, would it ever be possible? It's absolutely possible. Is it likely they'll do that though? I don't think they will. I think if they were going to, they would have done it already. Next question. Hey, Mr. Monday, have a good happy. Wait. Huh? Okay. I have a kind of a big question, so I have a Kasatsu proc trait. Yes, a full trait. Maybe it's my lack of understanding of expansions of a new MMO, but is the Heavensward storyline canon? You have an explanation here. I don't think I need to read it. The answer is yes. It immediately follows the end of the previous patch, of the previous expansion, or the previous section of the game. 2.55 is a prequel, and immediately the beginning of Heavensward takes off after the events of that. I'm actually kind of curious what the explanation is. Okay, so to explain my question, first, Heavensward isn't required to play 14, unlike A Realm Reborn. Okay, let's be clear here. The original 14 is destroyed. A Realm Reborn is the original game now. So we'll just clarify that right here. Second, the 4.0 story start after the events of 2.55 is the player who didn't buy 3.0 because it's optional. It's not optional. If you want to get from 50 to 60, you need Heavensward. And for the next expansion, at that point, Heavensward will be mandatory to move on. So I just don't think you really understood exactly what Heavensward is. Yes, you don't need to buy it to play the original game, but A Realm Reborn is the base game now, even though it has that fancy name. It's 2.0 doesn't matter that's the number. It is the original game. And while Heavensward is optional, it's not optional if you want to actually continue with the story and play the continued story. 4.0 is going to technically continue where 3.x ends. Wherever Heavensward ends, that's where 4.0 will continue. The only difference is that what they're going to do when 4.0 comes out, or they've said they're planning on it, is that instead of forcing people to do the Heavensward story, if you want to just level through that immediately without needing to if you want to just, you hit level 60, you just want to go right into the next expansion, you can just do that. You don't need to do all the additional patches worth of story in order to get there like you did with 2.1 through 2.55. You'll be able to just watch like kind of like a brief overview of what happened to get you caught up, and then you can go right on to 4.0. If you have read the explanation, have a pun-intended throwaway question mainly for laughs. If the Warrior of Darkness is literally a warrior, is the Dark Knight equivalent in the Dark Knight of Darkness? Yeah. It seems that way because the Paladin of Darkness is in the trailer, so I think the Warrior of Darkness may be a literal pun on the fact that he is a warrior, and I fully expect it to be that way. And finally, P.S. When warriors shouldn't tank, dragons shouldn't jump, and scholars shouldn't tank or heal the raid. I hope you get my drift. Oh, I do, and everyone watching does. Don't worry. Next question. Next question. Anyway, sup, Mr. Happy? So, if you're still annoyed by that scholar, literally in less than 30 seconds, we talked about that scholar twice already. Have a question and take your mind off of it. I recently started leveling Fisher again after leaving it for a long time. I've just unlocked Mooch, and I need some pointers on how it works. It seems random to me. I think it is random. I don't know anything about fishing. I'm not the right person. You know how I leveled my Fisher? I handed in a bunch of fish. I did so little fishing on my Fisher to level it. So I'm not the right person to ask, but I'm pretty sure it is random and your goal is to just know when you need to mooch. I think that's all it is. Next question. Sup, Haps? I have an in question. I've seen some guides that will say to use Huton, then wait 20 seconds before pulling so you can open with Sweeton. But I don't know what you're supposed to do if you're in the Duty Finder, get a tank that doesn't wait. You just improvise. Like, the thing is, you're never going to end up in those optimal situations. Whether or not you're doing the Sweeton opener or you're doing the regular opener, whichever one you're doing, depending on which fight you're doing, regardless of which one you're doing, don't expect it in the Duty Finder. The only thing you can do is potentially try to Huton even sooner. Like, you're running to the boss. You're in the hallway before the boss. You Huton there, knowing that by the time the tank pulls, it's likely going to have been about 20 seconds. That's about the only thing you can really do in the Duty Finder, which is, it's the best advice I can give you, man. Unfortunately, you're never going to have a tank on mobs that are as easy as the bosses in the dungeons wait for you like that. It's almost never going to happen. All right, next question. So a bit longer story with a question for you, Haps. If you choose to take it, then have an epic luck bonus on all your drops across games you play. I did bold the main question. Actually, if it's that long, which I can see that it is, let me just get a rough idea of what's going on here. So I'll read the first part. You healed through 2.x. The only issue I had was the Searing Wind mechanic in Infert Extreme, and Tasha Hard gave you some trouble. Okay. When 3.0 released, I went in with my White Mage. You were about I-108. You jumped in at level 52 to Dusk Vigil. But before the first boss, the group died on the third set of trash. Tried your hardest, couldn't keep the heal up. The tank said they never died there before, and the group kicked you. Alright, so that seems to be the basic thing. So question, what is something I can do to rid myself of the comprehension about healing? I really enjoyed it and hate feeling so afraid of a role I found fun. So you had one situation where the tank died and they blamed you for it. And then you also say here that you went in with some friends and it was okay. I mean, there's a number of things that could be. If you went in with a random group and the tank died, there's always a possibility they weren't using any cooldowns. Even then, it is pretty strange to not be able to do that. I don't know if you had your level 52 healing ability yet either. I don't know what item level your weapon was. I don't know if maybe they were pulling and not using cooldowns on top of you not having enough what's it called? Just not healing enough. I don't know if you were, not using Divine Seal or Presence of Mind, if you were trying to DPS too much. Like, all of these are unknown factors to me. The only thing I can do is, there's only one way to tackle your fears, and that's head on. Because when you do that, you learn one of two things. You either learn that you can overcome that fear, and that it was something that you fabricated out of a single experience, or that you are really afraid. One of those two things, and then if you see that you're really afraid still, guess what? You have the choice. Do it again. Do you keep going until you hit that point where you're not afraid of it anymore and practice? Or do you just cave in and give in to your fear of said situation? And on top of that, you said you recently picked up tanking. And you're afraid of the same thing. You're afraid of the same thing, but at the same time, you're also really, really enjoying it. I think it's good as a healer. You're also playing a tank. You understand as a healer what it means to pop your cooldowns as a tank, and as a tank, you understand, why you want to pop your cooldowns when you're with a certain healer. So I think it's the right thing. I think you just gotta buckle down and just do it. Take Shia LaBeouf's advice. Just do it. And I think you'll find that in most situations, you'll be okay. And of course, you can always hop by the stream and ask for healing advice. Just need more specific information regarding what happened leading up to the death of the tank, so we can determine if it was something tank related or something healing related. Next question. Hey there, Mr. Happy. Have an elegant tombstone of bears bonus. That's what's coming in 3.2. Bears. No, parasites, more specifically. Anyway, my question is about Guildhest. While leveling my Dragoon, I was scouring the challenge log for stuff to do, and I noticed a Guildhest section, so I queued up for the 4 that I thought there were. I was surprised to learn that there are more Guildhests to unlock later down the line. There are options all the way up to 45, with the last one being an 8-man Guildhest. You think that the devs could add more to the Guildhest system as a way of supplementing existing content, maybe use them as a raid practice mode? That's been suggested before, that Guildhests will ultimately be the thing where the raid practice mode comes out. Something that we are anticipating will happen with either 3.1 or 3... Well, I'm sorry, we know it's not going to happen with 3.1. With 3.2 for the original Savage. That being said, Guildhests are supposed to be your initial introduction to basic mechanics of the game, and people already don't use them for that. Very often, people don't read what the entire goal of it is and what the rules of the Guildhest are. So unfortunately, you have this tool in the game that is supposed to teach people the very basics of, hey, in some fights, you'll have to attack certain targets and ignore other targets. You guys already know what Guildhest I'm talking about. You just only attack this target or this will happen. And if you attack this target, something bad will happen. And people don't recognize that. And they just think, oh, there's all these things, kill everything. Oh, why are we dying? I don't get it. So I don't think that you're going to expand on specifically the Guildhest system anymore. I think that it's there to teach you the basics, and whether or not you use it for that, great. I think it could also be incentivized with a little bit more experience points from it, but I know they don't want to go down that line too much because, for the most part, you'll only do it for the first time bonus on each class, if even that anyway. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy. I've been hearing a lot of complaints about Warrior in Deliverance. When I got to the bottom of it by asking questions, it seems quite a bit of healers rather brand new to healing, or healers who simply thought all tanks operate the same, that for the most part healers are not aware that Warriors break the mold with their tank stance, not reducing the damage that they take, and a Warrior in Deliverance is taking the same amount of damage as a Warrior in Defiance. And you see Square Enix changing Warrior's tank stance to reduce damage in later patches. Probably not. I don't see a reason. Like, they already have, the strength is I have a higher health pool, and I receive more healing, which means that it takes longer for my health pool to deplete to 0, that's part of my tankiness, as well as taking more healing to make up for that lost health pool. Now, on top of that, with the higher health bar, they, with the higher health and higher healing received, that means that Eloquium values are higher on them, so the shielding is higher, Stone Skin values are higher on them, which gives them even more mitigation to a degree. On top of that, they have, this 20% damage reduction when they do need it for the 5 stacks that also heals. There's a lot more behind Defiance than just, this is what my tank stance does, because it also enables you to access all of these abilities and this stacking buff for your parry rate, or in the case of Deliverance, your critical hit rate, and then it also buffs your damage. Like, all of those things all factor into what their tank stances do. I don't see a point in doing that. For me, it's more along the lines of, if you're the Warrior in this case, make sure you analyze the party you're with. Do a pull where you see, what is my healer doing? What are my DPS doing? How long did this pull take to do? Before you all of a sudden say, yeah, I'm just gonna go Deliverance on 5 enemies when I don't know anything about the people I'm playing with in the Duty Finder. I'm somebody who will either ask right away, can I do a large pull? If the healer says, yeah, go right ahead, then I'll just assume healer's got it. But I still don't know if the DPS are good enough to handle that large pull in a short enough period of time before either the healer starts running low on resources or I run out of cooldowns. So that's why I feel like either communicating with the people or understanding who you're with before actually doing those large pulls and going in Deliverance is a more important thing to me. It's basically just treat it like you've never played with these people. You actually have. Just treat them like they're completely random people that have never played the game before, and they're learning it on the spot. And then once you see how well they know what they're doing, then you can determine how you want to play. I don't think Deliverance needs a change. I don't think they need to give Defiance damage reduction. And if anything, that would just make Warriors even stronger, and it would have to take away something else that they already have for them. That being said, just analyze your parties, because you don't take less damage while you're in Deliverance, but you do have a smaller health pool, you do take less healing, and some healers are used to, and also sometimes tanks don't use, abilities to reduce the damage that they take while in that stance. And without their increased healing, sometimes healers get a bit panicky and it can go real downhill real fast. So just play safe in the Duty Finder. That's my #1 piece of advice. Next question. Yo Hat, fast question for week 65. So I have some nice cool Guinness beer. Can you see Doomtrain working at 14? They already teased Doomtrain in the 2-year anniversary event. We don't know where he's going to pop up. Not in 3.1, I can guarantee you that. At least not as a primal. But yeah, Doomtrain could fit pretty easily into Final Fantasy 14 with all the other crazy shit we have. Yeah, he's going to fit, and he will definitely be making an appearance sometime in the future. Don't know when, though. Alright, next question. Hi, Mr. Happy, first-time poster, so here's the map to the treasure chest. I have 2 questions for you, but I know you're busy, so I'll ask the more important one first. Recently, I was put through Duty Finder in Aurum Vale where it seemed 2 people had dropped. All that was left was a tank and a healer. Well, I'm assuming you're one of those people, because if 2 people had... Oh, okay, so you're one of the... You filled in one of the 2 DPS drops, okay. The healer didn't speak English really well, and when I asked the tank, informed me that the healer didn't know the first boss mechanics. We both explained these to him, and he understood. In this time, we got another DPS, went into the first boss. The healer then didn't seem to know how to heal at all. On the first attempt, he only healed himself. On the second, he kept the tank alive, but died to the mechanic, having not eaten fruit. We tried to be patient, but I think he must have gotten upset as he apologized and left. Unfortunately, as a full-time DPS and new player, I don't really have to know how to heal. But in the meantime, are there any tips I can give a healer to help them out and avoid this in the future? It sounds like you did everything you could, and that at this point it was up to the player to better understand the mechanics of the game. By this point, you've reached Aurum Vale. You have to have been through a few other dungeons in the game. You have to have. And the basics are, you click someone and you heal them. Now, this isn't a healer I would never harass a healer that's playing on this level to DPS, so I would want them to focus on healing. It almost seems like perhaps he was trying to play with a controller for the first time, or it was somebody borrowing someone else's account to try and play for the first time, but again, potentially with a controller, where it's not necessarily, if you don't have the experience with it, it's kind of hard to tell what to do. it's really hard to say. I don't think you could have done anything else in this situation. You explained the mechanics. You gave him a few shots. You didn't boot him immediately. He ended up leaving out of his own embarrassment. And I don't think there's anything more you could have done here. I think you did the right thing in the first place, and that any tips I give you to give to a healer are not going to help in this kind of situation. I think this is down to a player needing to better understand the way the mechanics of the game work, and how targeting works, and how spell casting works, before it is about giving them tips on how to heal. And you also had a second question. If you could add any one ability to any one class, which I would not want to add abilities to anymore, what would you make? I would make an ability for ninja that makes them actually stealth while in combat. However, it only makes them stealth for a short period of time. That way they can execute trick attack and still have access to their ninjutsu for other means. That is the one thing I would have. It would also give them a stealth option for PvP once they've already started in battle. And I don't know if I would make it like full Cloak of Shadows like World of Warcraft, but something like that actually makes ninjas have some degree of stealth to some level. I don't care how much. Something for them to actually be sneaky. Alright, next question. I'm not even going to bother coming up with some epic pickup line, because he keeps skipping it anyway, so screw you, bro. Yeah, I skip this guy every week, puts questions up that has some sort of pickup line. I skip it on purpose, because I see the name immediately. Anyway, imagine if you win the MGP Jumbo Cactpot this week. Would you buy Fenrir? Or would you wait and save the MGP for when they finally release a 1 mil MGP flying mount? Has there been any word of a flying 1 mil MGP mount? Not yet, but I do expect one to happen eventually. Just like I expect a flying mount to hit the cash shop eventually. Question 2, just watch your 3.1 patch notes video where you said you're guessing the weapons from Thordon's Reign are going to be 205. If that would be the case, what would be the item level of the relic at 3? I think relics are going to be 210 right off the bat. They're coming in 3.15. At this point, that is supposed to be the near halfway mark. I put that in quotes because it never has been. Between the current patch cycle and the next patch cycle. So I fully expect the relic to release at I-210. Did I say 310 or 110? I meant to say 210 if I didn't say the right one. I think it's going to be 210, and I think Gob Dips are going to be added to the Void Arc and the Hunt at that exact same time. That is my guesstimate. We shall see. Next question. Hey, Haps, how's it going? Have an early Void Arc drop. The minion. Good. That's the thing I need more than anything, so thank you. On to the question. I'll try to bold the highlights, but I ramble a bit much, so sorry. I'm one of the leads for a static that is a little lost right now. 2 or 3 of our group members want to try out Alex Savage and actually raid, but the other 5 or 4 don't even want to attempt it. Yes, I know we are missing our 8th. Okay, good. I was about to say, that doesn't add up to 8. I was literally just thinking that. We've gamed together as a group for years, clearing difficult content in Star Wars, attempted to partner over an allied guild for Star Wars, a raid in Wildstar. A bunch of people are away at the start of 2.1, so we never got into Coil until it was too late. We agreed that we are not a world-first type of static. As such, collectively, as a group, we extremely dislike Alex in general. One member was not diligent enough to reach the item level requirement because we, as a group, had assumed it would be lower, which is entirely our fault. It did cause a schism for a while, but the disagreement has been worked out. As such, collectively, as a group, holy moly. When Alex Normal came out, there was a tizzy in the group, so they dislike Alex in general. Top it all, if only 2 or 3 mentioned in the beginning actively try to better themselves as a job anymore. They all used to try and be the best they could back in Star Wars. Since there's nothing productive for some of our members to direct their energy to, various drama has erupted, which has caused me to take co-lead which has caused my co-lead to take an indefinite break from the game until 3.1, they say, but I think otherwise. I'd like to get our group into casual hardcore rating at the, again, I get what you mean. Casual in the amount of progress you expect to make, and hardcore in the amount of time, or the other way around. That's my only question. But at the moment, it seems pretty insurmountable. I know at this point we have no hope of clearing A4 Savage, but getting up to A3 Savage seems possible. Any expert advice on wrangling people, getting them in shape for their jobs in a constructive manner, since most of them are pretty poor at their jobs at the moment when they... Honestly, I'm sorry, but this doesn't sound like it's going to work. Like, the number of problems you've listed behind drama of people who are interested versus people who aren't, it sounds like this isn't going to happen. That if the people who do want to attempt Savage seriously want to attempt it, they're going to have to find a different group of people to do it with, or it doesn't seem like it's ever going to happen. Either that, or you guys need to all accept that you get along as friends, that you don't need to tackle the hardest content to game together. Game in multiple games together. Do something, but I don't think this is going to work for Alex Savage. If you aren't even in there yet, and there's this much of a rift between the people, I don't see how it's ever going to work once you do get in there. There is a possibility that people who didn't want to do it end up really liking the idea and getting into it. That's extremely unlikely based on the situation that you're describing to me here. I think your best bet is when people come back for 3.1, you put it to a vote one more time. If it doesn't happen, then if you seriously want to raid, it's going to have to be the people who don't want to do it are just not going to, you just can't bring them. It's the bottom line. Can't force people to like a part of the game they have no interest in. That's ultimately the way it goes. All right, we had another long question that I read through. So the writer here is saying that they're having trouble progressing in A3 Savage because he, the main tank, is dying to mechanics, whatever it may be. But mostly just from random damage in the fight because the Astros doesn't seem to be able to keep him alive during certain sections of the fight. And that's not when, and this guy's a Dark Knight and he's not dropping grid. It's out of the question for him according to what he says. They originally ran White Mage Astro, however the Astro demanded that when they wanted a Scholar, that the White Mage go Scholar instead of the Astro, and the Astro would try the solo heal when possible. Even threatened to quit if the group pushed him too hard to try and change jobs, as opposed to the White Mage, who has been a White Mage main since turn 5, doesn't change the Scholar instead. So, it's his first time healing when it comes to hardcore endgame content, but with his lack of ability to work with the team, his lack of improvement, and his lack of ability to take blame for wipes, they are considering booting him if he doesn't improve in patch 3.1. Difficult situation is the writer is married to this person in game. So TLDR, my in-game husbando sucks and he refuses to be a team player, but I really don't want to kick him from the static. Any suggestions on how I can solve this amicably? It sounds like he's too much of a hardhead, kind of like the advice I just had for the people before. It's like, you put yourself, like, I've been getting these questions a lot more, where people bring me a situation, and it's, I want to take care of this in a civil fashion. But the person who you're trying to do it with in a civil fashion is not civil. They are somebody who's very hard-headed and refuses to accept any sort of criticism or go outside of the box, or just refuses to even, you know, just the thought of doing something different than what they're already doing. It's just, they won't do it. To me, I think of that and I go, okay, this person probably doesn't deserve to be an Alexander Savage. That's what I think. It's one thing to not be good and not go into a raid. That's entirely different. You can try to help people improve. But to actively refuse to work with your party, accept any sort of criticism, that is what I feel, just, you don't work well with others. You shouldn't be in a static. For me, that's how I feel about this person. Unless you can talk to them, get them to improve so you stop dying at random points. I don't know how random they are because I'm not watching you fight. But unless you can get them to improve, it's going to have to be kicked. Like, you can't have people like this bringing the entire team down, because that makes other people want to quit the game, and then you got to replace them instead. So you really, really got to get this guy into wraps. Either he improves or he's got to be gone. I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel it's got to be. Alright, next question. Hi, Mr. Happy. Just down Ravana Extreme. Congrats. So you can have my Hive token. Aw, that means you got your weapon in one shot. I know. What are your thoughts on the difference between elitism and raider mentality? Also, could Ethos Sly and you do State of the Realm on how to improve on progression content, especially when no guides are out yet? As always, keep up the great work. I think that I do the most, like, hardcore progression rating. We would probably need a few guests on the show. Things that can be arranged. So I'll have to look at a list of potential guests. Also, I don't know if you've seen it, but Frosty TV, who does Mod Talk, another podcast, had a member from Elysium, had Layla on, as well as another guest. So I highly recommend that you go check out the old episodes of Mog Talk, Google it, go on Twitch, because that was an excellent episode to get Layla's insight on. So let's see, your thoughts on the difference between elitism. So elitism doesn't necessarily have to mean you're good at the game. It just means that you see yourself above others in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't necessarily have to be with raiding. It could be with crafting. It could be with gathering, as stupid as it sounds. It could be with Lords of Verminion. It could be with chocobo racing. If you see yourself above somebody else, regardless of the, like, you don't care. Like, the only way you judge that person is how well they play the game. You don't care if they're a good person. You don't care if you guys get along. If they're not good at the game, you despise them for it, which means you wouldn't ever get along in the first place. So that was a pretty dumb thing to say. To me, that's what elitism. A raider is somebody who likes raiding. That's all they are. They're not necessarily elitist. Some raiders are elitist, and some raiders aren't really elitists, but they still have, like, I still want the people I play with to be good at what they do, but they're kind of like the guy who was asking, I really like this guy, but he's not improving. Like, that guy's not an elitist for, you know, harping on his Astro for not being able to keep him alive. That's a raider who's looking for a solution to an issue within his raid. So I feel like that's the biggest difference between elitism and raider. Elitism, you see yourself above other people, and a raider is just defines the kind of content that you prefer to play in the game. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, I'm the guy that kind of went on a rant last week about time gating and just how grindy everything has been feeling lately. I just wanted to thank you for answering my question the way you did and for giving me some honest hope for 3.1. I will definitely be playing at the start of 3.1 and will be sure to give you an update after a few weeks. Thanks again for the reassurance and keeping awesome. Insert free tombstone message here. Oh, there's no question. Okay, well, thank you, and glad to see that you enjoyed my answer on the show. Hopefully other people don't feel too bad about, you know, my answers to their questions, or they feel good about my answer to their questions is what I should say. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I'll say. Let's move on to the next question. All right, next one. Hey, Mr. Happy, long-time viewer, first-time questioner. So let's kick it like the old-school vets we are and take that sweet, sweet elegant tombstone of philosophy bonus. Fuck that, I don't want to be a vet. That shit ain't worth anything. Long story short, I've gotten pretty sick of my current server community, specifically my FC, but that's another story. I'm looking to transfer servers. Since I remember that you transferred servers a while back, I was wondering if you could recommend a strategy on items to buy up on my current server that I could resell on my new server. Maybe some specific items that hold their value, or just general advice. So one thing that people do to transfer money is they play the market. There's two very common items that people used to use, and that was Allegan pieces, you know, the things that you get from the early quests, because they have static values like 100, 500, 1,000. You buy as many of those as possible for around the same price. You'll probably take a bit of a hit on Gil, but then when you go to the next, when you go to the other server, you either sell them for that enhanced amount, or you just vendor them right away to get your Gil back. The same thing with clear demi-materia, functions the same way. Other than that, if you want to actually try to make money, you just need to find a market that you see is popular on your server, find out if it's popular on the new server, and then just buy a bunch and then sell it when you get there. Depending on how much the market fluctuates, you're probably going to take a hit on Gil regardless of this, but that's usually the safest thing to do. I didn't do that, believe it or not. I didn't actually have a lot of Gil to worry about at the time, so I just transferred and I was like, fuck it. Like, I don't even have a million Gil at this point. Like, fuck it. That's it. We're done. I'm moving over. Let's do it. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, longtime viewer. You get no bonus from me, sadly, as you used to answer questions from my YouTube, and yes, I know the reason why you don't anymore, but you've already answered many questions since when you first started doing this. Alright, no problem. Anyway, the question I actually passively asked Ethis in one of his videos, and it's more of a what-if type of question, completely hypothetical, and coincidentally has to do with Final Fantasy V's Krill, Kururu. I asked this before it was revealed that she would be in 3.1, oddly enough. Let's say you are tasked with implementing a plot twist in which the Warrior of Light actually dies. Not too far-fetched, as the dev team is admittedly fans of Game of Thrones, so humor me. However, this being an MMO, skills, levels, abilities, and all that would be transferred over to a successor, much like Krill's implementation in Final Fantasy V. What ideas would you have to not only facilitate this, but make it engaging enough for the average player not to grumble over this, but he actually be incentivized to do it? I'm interested in what sort of ideas you have for yourself. The only thing that comes to mind here is it almost sounds like you're starting your character over. If you want to incentivize it, you need to make it so that starting your character over, it makes them stronger. Like doing new game plus almost. You get to keep all your items, but you start at the beginning of the game, you lose all your levels, just your character is stronger. And every time you go into new game plus, your character's stronger. Granted, in that case, the enemies you're up against are usually stronger as well. So I don't think there's a good enough way to incentivize this, and it would have to be facilitated by the story to top it all off. It'd be like the Warrior of Darkness killing the Warrior of Light, but your physical body died, but your light lived on, and your light inhabited a new body. That would be the only way I could imagine this could be ever done to transfer it over to a successor. I don't think they'd let you, influence the body of an already existing character. You'd basically be doing character creation again, and somebody would say, wait a minute, I recognize that light. You're the reincarnation of this. And even then, I would still grumble at it. Like, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a fan of temporarily killing a character and bringing them back, as long as you don't do it too much. Square Enix bringing all the Scions back from the look of it, ridiculous. But anyway, that's the only way I can imagine doing it, and even then, I don't think that's a great idea. Next question. Greetings from South Joyzy. Hey. Couple of quick questions. Having gone through an awful raid with many new folks, what do you think about upping the new player bonus? If they were to give a bonus for each new player, or a bonus tome of your choice, what's it called? Less of a, that might have stopped me from eventually bailing. Yeah, you know what? That's not so bad of an idea to give multiplicative bonuses. You can also, it also doesn't, sometimes you join a party And you can immediately tell if it says there's a new player. You can tell, you look at everyone around, who's new? Definitely that guy. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you see there are multiple new people, but sometimes you can't always identify who hasn't done it before because maybe somebody's got a lot of like ESO gear or something like that. That being said, the only way I can imagine doing that is not to do it additively, but to make it like it's 100 for the first, 150 if there's two, etc., etc., etc. That's not a bad idea. I think that could be implemented to some degree and make it successful. Second, and I may have missed, what level do you anticipate the first weapon in the Anima Relic being? So you actually bring up a point. I've been telling people what I think the final item level is going to be, which is 210, since it's coming in 3.15. I do think that similar to the Atma and Anima steps, Animus steps, sorry, that there may be multiple points that the weapon has. When we first get it, it might be closer to like I-200, I think. But even then, that's when we first get it, not you'll have it immediately, and that's what it'll be. But I don't think it's going to follow something similar to the Atma Animus boost, where it doesn't get any item level for X amount of time, and then eventually it blows up and it has the weapon damage on it. So, I think that it's going to be 200 to start and 210 by the time you complete it in 3.15. All right, next question. Dear Mr. Happy, I have a couple of questions for you this week pertaining to your first experiences with content in 14. Oh, this is... couple means two. But there's like 8 questions here. All right. What was your most memorable fight in 14? 1.0 or 2.0 is my only question. If anything, I would be turn 9. What was your most memorable moment in 14? The moment when I was... The moment when I... the Ultima Weapon. When I first encountered Ultima Weapon. That's probably my most memorable one. What is your favorite primal fight pre-Heavensward? That would be... Ramuh. Pretty easy fight, but at the same time, I liked that it was different than the rest. What is your favorite primal fight overall? Thordan. And yes, Thordan counts. What is your favorite raid? And that's not for difficulty. That's because he's a badass. If anything, the only other one I would count would be Phoenix. Phoenix is technically a primal fight. You know what? I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with Phoenix as my favorite primal fight. What is your favorite raid in 14? That would be the second Coil of Bahamut. Granted, my favorite boss in all of Final Fantasy XIV would be A3 Savage. And what attracted you to 14 in the first place? Final Fantasy fanboy, played Final Fantasy XI for 7 years. Seemed like a natural progression for me to go from 11 to 14. And even though they are nothing alike game-wise, it was a natural progression for me. I've been thinking about these questions a lot looking back when the game first came out. Interested to hear your thoughts? Well, hopefully you were interested to hear them. That did not take really that long to answer, so thank you for the variety of questions. Alright, so all of the remaining questions are incredibly long, so much so to the point where I don't feel like I will be able to get through to them. So that being said, if you have a really long question, if anything, bold the parts that are important or TLDR it. That way, if I can read it off camera and then answer the TLDR like you see me do from time to time, just give people a brief explanation of what it is, that would be way better because, like, I would love to answer these questions, but these are really long and they're all back to back. Like it's 3 or 4 back to back to back, really long questions. So I'm going to answer 2 questions remaining, and then I am going to wrap up this video. So I'm going to grab this one first. Week 64's question, if you have time. I wanted to talk about Beastmaster. Beastmaster in 14, I want it, but I know 11's Beast won't work here. I like your idea of it being maybe like a druid and it takes forms, but I feel that's too close to Blue Mage. I feel like the only way to do it, make it more like Summoner, give him a caster, melee, and a tank, and that's it. The jars in 11 were neat, but weak, and the charmed mobs were strong but risky. So I wanted to know what your in-depth thoughts. I feel that ultimately Beastmaster is probably going to end up like World of Warcraft's Hunter, where they are a dedicated DPS, and they have whoops, sorry, that's my phone. They have dedicated pets that fill, like you say, dedicated roles. So that's where I see them going. If not, Beastmasters were known for their axes in 11. They could be a melee pet class, but I want my Puppet Master to be a melee pet class, so no. Okay, fine. If one of those two things. I expect them to be either a melee pet class or a ranged pet class akin to the Hunter. So they're either going to be a Hunter or a Huntard. If you're a World of Warcraft, you understand what that terminology means. But like a real Huntard. Like that's their job. Maybe. We'll see. And the final question for this week. Hey, Haps, hope your week is going well. Not a first-time asker, so no bonus. Tough luck. Damn it. So due to circumstances out of my control, I already know I am getting a PS4 for Christmas, and I'm contemplating getting 14 for console, but I already have the PC version. My question is to you, knowing that you made a transition from keyboard and mouse to controller for your Let's Play series, which, sorry, I haven't made those a lot really lately, how hard was it for you to get used to the controls on the controller? I actually decided to borrow a controller from my partner to get used to it before I get the PS4 version, but I figured I'd ask for an opinion. So the first thing I did, went into the controls and just got the basics down. hold right trigger, does this, hold left trigger. Figured out, you know, what buttons did I click with the easiest? Like, okay, these buttons I have an easy time getting to. Like, I never get confused. The hardest thing for me was holding down right trigger and using the D-pad, or holding down left trigger and using the other buttons. For some reason, that clicked to me as difficult to do, mostly because I would get wrapped up in when I would press R1 to switch hotbars, I would get lost. Like, I bro R1 and then I would find the button, but then I would get lost somewhere. So ultimately, that's when I ended up figuring out the extra hotbar way of doing it, where if you hold down right trigger and then you hold down left trigger afterwards, it will actually activate just a specific 8 buttons, like half of a cross hotbar. They gave me access to my abilities on a much easier level without having to do that whole R1 switch in between. Also, be sure to mess with your targeting. Be sure to mess with your keybinds and make sure that you have a keyboard nearby, that you don't make your keybinds on your controller, on your keyboard, too similar to what they were when you played keyboard and mouse. When I do that, it gets a little bit it gets more confusing, because then I start typing and then I start trying to move around as if I'm a keyboard player, because I'm just so used to doing everything on that one on this one piece of peripheral. So those are my 2 biggest pieces of advice. Just go to your cross hotbar settings, understand why they're there, and really just feel out all of your abilities. Do not immediately try to do content. Feel out your abilities and then work your way up through the content curve before you just jump right into something like Savage. But anyway, that's going to be all of the questions I answered for this week. Thank you everyone for coming by and asking your questions. Remember, if you want to ask a question for next week, be sure to do it in the thread over on the Dream Network forums. You can find that thread in the description of the video. Sorry, I accidentally hit my arm on the desk right here. Also, again, thank you everyone who participated in Extra Life. It really means a lot to me that we hit $6,100 basically. But keep in mind that, like I said, I'm leaving the donation thing open. If you're somebody who wants to contribute still, I will leave the link open, and we will do a follow-up stream to get to that 10,000 mark. But anyway, thank you everyone for watching. I will see you all next week for the next Mondays with Mr. Happy, where I'm sure you guys will have plenty of 3.1 questions to ask me. But anyway, thank you for watching. See you guys next time. And until then, take care.